In my time as a dungeon master, one of the things I have most often been praised for is my ability to run campaigns centered around political intrigue. And this isn't a way to pat myself on the back or anything, but I figured since I've heard it a number of times that there might be something of value rattling around in the old brain.
Boy, I'm too old for this shit.
Not for me, you're not sure?
Because politics and political intrigue and all of that is such a large topic of discussion, this one will be broken down into a series of videos. And I understand that with how close we are to the election, that there might be some out there who are a bit fatigued with politics.
You are the single biggest liar. You probably are worse than Jeb Bush. You are the single biggest liar.
But I promise we'll stick strictly to fantasy and not let modern politics get in the way. So, I guess the most appropriate place to start is to define how I view fantasy politics, the importance of it, and then get into how I run political intrigue and where I draw inspiration from. So to start out, I think there is a big misunderstanding within political play and an overemphasis on the higher end. So let's get this out of the way. Politics and political play isn't limited to dusty monarchs, endless council meetings, or noble houses sniping at each other over a throne. If that's all you think politics is, then you're missing out on the larger picture. Politics in tabletop games is about the art of influence, players navigating a web of interest, leveraging alliances, and facing the consequences of their choices. It's about how every decision impacts the social, moral, and power dynamics around them. Political play exists at every level. It's the rogue deciding who to blackmail in the Thieves Guild, the druid choosing which faction's agenda they'll let trample the wilderness, or the paladin wrestling with whether an alliance compromises their oath. When done well, politics is a living, breathing part of the world that forces players to actually think, and I think that's exactly what makes some people uncomfortable with it. Too often, dungeon masters and players will skip out on politics because they think it's too complicated or distracting. There is a worry that introducing political elements will either bore players or that it's simply too highbrow to work in a fantasy world. But the reality is that if a campaign can't handle anything more than swinging swords and collecting loot, it's not half as immersive as you think it is. Great games engage players' brains. They challenge them not just with monsters, but with ideologies, loyalties, and the mess of personal motivation. Politics in tabletop games isn't optional, in my opinion. It's an essential tool for creating a world that actually matters. When dungeon masters avoid it, they're settling for a shallower experience that misses the potential of what tabletop games can be. It's easy to fall back on high fantasy tropes, where the only politics is a king on his throne or an evil overlord pulling the strings. And that's fine, I've said it plenty of times, that clear good versus clear evil is a great tool. Avoiding real political nuance can make your game feel a bit stale depending on what your ultimate goal is. Why? Because politics is one way you can ground a story in reality, how you make players care about the world, and how you give them stakes that resonate with them. In a world without politics, players are tourists. They pass through, they fight monsters, and they gather loot and then leave. There's no real connection. Political play gives players a chance to do something more, to shape the world through their actions and their allegiances. It's collaboration at its finest, where the players are no longer passengers, but co-creators. They don't just watch the story unfold, they actively sculpt its path. The truth is, players love complexity. They want the chance to make real decisions, to weigh consequences, and to feel like they're part of something larger than themselves. If you think your campaign can't handle that, the problem isn't politics, it's the way you're thinking about tabletop games. So to sum up, political play to me in tabletop games is the structured interplay of power, influence, and alliance building amongst factions, leaders, or individuals within a campaign world. It revolves around competing interests and objectives, where each faction or character has a set of motivations and resources that they leverage to gain advantages, protect their goals, or undermine their rivals. Players engage with this landscape by navigating relationships, making strategic decisions, and negotiating alliances, all while managing the risks and consequences of shifting loyalties and hidden agendas. Essentially, political play centers on non-combat dynamics that requires players to influence or resist the forces of power through choices, persuasion, and compromise. So, with that out of the way, how do I successfully run political intrigue within my games? For me, the most important part is ensuring you have a structure that works. For one, a common mistake I see a lot of people make is that they set things up like a chain. This group wants to do this, and this guy is connected to that guy, and that guy is connected to this other group, and so on and so on and so forth, right? The problem with this approach is that it doesn't feel like a complex power structure. It feels like, and rightfully is, just information gated behind mystery. The players can't look at an overview of the situation and draw from where the strings are attached. Instead, the only way you can make each connection is by being explicitly told the exact connection to follow. To run political intrigue well, you need to structure your campaign world as a series of overlapping interests rather than a simple hierarchy or chain to follow. This means factions with nuanced motives, conflicting ambitions, and hidden alliances. A good intrigue setup feels like a web. Each faction connects to the others, sometimes in ways that they even aren't fully aware of. In this structure, players can influence one faction to indirectly affect another, sometimes without realizing the full impact of their choices, and with the right work or setup, they can intelligently see those strings prior to acting. To make this work, flesh out each faction's goals, values, and leaders, giving each a unique perspective and a believable reason for pursuing their objectives. This way, players don't just feel like they're navigating a single power structure. They're tangling with a network of influence where every decision could bring new allies or unexpected enemies. This creates tension as players grapple with uncertainty, forcing them to strategize and consider their moves with caution. Keep these relationships fluid. Political alliances shift over time, all the time, especially as players intervene. So factions should occasionally surprise players by allying with former enemies or betraying old friends. So, with the faction work taken care of, what's next? Honestly, this kind of goes hand in hand with faction work, but NPCs are the heart of political intrigue, and they should feel like fully realized characters with hidden motives or layered personalities. Each important NPC should have a public persona and a private one, ways they act in public and things that they'll only reveal in private. These layers make interactions feel consequential, with NPCs providing clues, insights, or misinformation depending on their relationship with the players. So not only should the factions be fleshed out, but the NPCs, or at the very least the important ones, and sometimes you can wait until the players decide who are the important ones to do this, but they must be fully realized characters themselves. Without this, you're left trying to create this stuff on the fly, which can be done successfully, but in my experience, it often has the effect of making many of the characters feel very samey, because you aren't working with something that has much direction. So, with that being said, the last thing to me that is most important and foundational is setting the atmosphere. In political intrigue, atmosphere is everything. It's not just about what happens, but how players feel as they experience it. Running effective political intrigue means constantly creating an air of tension and suspicion, where players are never quite sure of the motives behind each offer, alliance, or seemingly friendly gesture. NPCs who speak in half-truths, documents with only part of the information revealed, and clues that hint at more beneath the surface. These tools make the world feel layered, encouraging players to approach conversations and clues carefully, always looking for the hidden meaning. Subtly suggest secrets in everything, through ambience, mannerisms, and even rumors. For instance, a noble who pauses before responding, or a council hall adorned with obscure symbols can provoke player curiosity. These details make players feel that they're always on the edge of uncovering something significant, pushing them to seek more information and dive deeper into the world's mysteries. One thing, though, that you don't want to do, or at least I don't suggest you should, is to make your players feel like full-on detectives. I find that political intrigue is best served when your players feel like information power brokers. Having players act in this manner rather than mere detectives elevates the stakes and depth of political intrigue by shifting their focus from gathering information to managing and manipulating it. When players gather intelligence only for their own understanding, the intrigue often becomes kind of like a personal puzzle, limited to who and what they know. But as power brokers, players become active agents in the political ecosystem, deciding who to share information with, what secrets to withhold, and how to leverage intel for strategic advantage. This role transforms them from passive observers to influential players, allowing them to shape alliances, create rivalries, and wield knowledge as a weapon in the complex web of factional power. My major influence when running this stuff is honestly history. To build a nuanced political world, look to real historical events. History offers countless examples of factions, betrayals, and shifting alliances, from the Borgia family in Renaissance Italy to the courtly intrigues of ancient China. These stories are rich with lessons in how people use power, leverage influence, and even manipulate appearances to maintain control. Reading about the betrayals, negotiations, and elaborate alliances in medieval courts or imperial dynasties can provide you with both practical ideas and inspiration for character archetypes. Think of the spiderweb intrigues of real-world historical figures like Cardinal Richelieu, who maneuvered through complex alliances and rivalries in 17th century France. Figures like him show that political intrigue isn't about broad declarations or dramatic power plays, but about the subtle, sometimes invisible hand guiding events from the shadows. These examples and other historical examples are perfect for political intrigue because history provides a rich tapestry of real-world power struggles and betrayals, all driven by complex human motives. These events are often far more intricate and layered than any fictional depictions, offering lessons in the manipulation of influence, the art of diplomacy, and the consequences of strategic decisions. Drawing from history allows you to create more authentic, relatable intrigue in your games, as players can recognize familiar dynamics, which helps in making the stakes feel more grounded and the consequences of their decisions more impactful. History's unpredictability and moral complexity make it the perfect foundation for building tension and depth in a political campaign. So that's about it for now. Like I said, there's so much to speak about when it comes to politics, and there are so many different avenues to explore, so this will certainly not be the only one moving forward. How about you all though? What do you all like or dislike about politics in your campaigns? Be sure to let me know in the comments. Either way, thank you for watching. I am Trill, and I hope you enjoyed.